Hello everyone and welcome to this new, let's say, get started course. And I really want to do more of these kind of courses because we have plenty of, I will really say plenty of tools that you can use in the data space. And of course, not every tool is something for you because maybe you don't really have the use case for it, but the tool itself sounds just so cool that you want to use it. But it might be that you have the use case for this. And what I'm trying in these kind of, let's say, getting started use cases is to give a little bit of background about the specific kind of tool category and then showcase, let's say, 3, 4, 5 different ways, often like different tools that you can use to achieve these kind of things. So the intention of this session here is to get you a quick overview and a quick feeling how you do stuff in the different kind of tools. And I will start from, let's say, the earliest point, so I will not skip any kind of signups. If you're just interested in seeing how different kind of data vendors are handling onboarding, this is also a great session for you because we will do quite some onboarding. So the idea, what I want to achieve is, in the first part, and this will be pretty quick, is I will explain what ETL is, or ELT, or whatever, and so what are the differences, and then we will really go into use cases. So our use case for today is we will load data from a repository in GitHub because I need it for another course that I will do next week. And we will do this by using 5 different vendors to achieve this thing. So what we want to achieve is, so we want to take a open source, open GitHub repository, and we want to pull relevant information about pull requests, about issues, about commits, and so on in our BigQuery database. So that's what we want to do. I'm trying to do this within 60 minutes. It might be a little bit longer, but please bear with me. In the end, you will see like an interesting session where you can really see how to achieve the same task in different kind of tools. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let's first start with a little bit of the basics. I really want to showcase you, okay, what are we looking at? And so we are looking today at ETL or ELT or, I don't know, whatever, EL. So this is like the interesting thing. What is that? And in the end, it's just an acronym for extract and a second one. So it's also not so hard to guess. Transform and load, or basically getting data from X to Y. This is, in the end, this is like what it is. The tricky thing about data is it usually doesn't appear magically, or it just doesn't get produced in the place where we will start to analyze it. This is definitely something that would be great, and maybe in some kind of future we will have that. But right now, let's say, even like in a classic setup, so you have an application database usually, because this database has to serve different kind of use cases, and then you have an analytical database. And so these are 2 different databases, and so you have to get some data from A to B to do your analysis, because like analysis on application kind of shaped data is usually pretty hard, and let's say doing application on analytical shaped data is also a little bit hard. It needs some translation in between, and this is what we do with ETL, ELT, whatever. So what is this ETL, ELT stuff about? Let's say in the beginning of time, which no, it's not really, but let's say the ETL is basically like the classic established term. So it's okay, I extract the data from somewhere. So via an API, via CDC, so change data capture, or whatever, or I just pull it from some SFTP servers. They are still around, people still use them. So I load the data. Then, because, as I already said, the data that I usually get doesn't really fit how I want to work with it, so I transform it. And so in the past, of course, it was definitely recommended to transform the data on the way before I load it into my analytical system, because it was quite an effort and usually quite an investment to do all these transformations then later in my analytical database. Transform was something that happened in between, and then load basically was like the final step to get the data into my database, destination, data lake, whatever. So then basically some tools came around that were doing some standard integration, and we will look into this in a second, what standard integration is. And they coined the term extract load transform. So they basically swapped just the order. And it's always like a nice marketing move to take a famous acronym and change it a little bit and say, hey, yeah, but we are the new guys, and so we do things really differently. And what they were basically building on was like the thing that the destinations became, let's say, technically more powerful. You had really like storage was really not a problem anymore, so you could theoretically just dump a ton of data just into a database, and then you do the transformation there. Why do it there? So I think the major reason was more like, and at least this was like why I got attracted to these kind of solutions, was if you transform from extracting until loading, you basically change the data already on the way. And I still had use cases where we later needed a different, let's say, different shape of data, or we cut off specific kind of data, and that was missing. So that was the problem. So then we basically had to do the whole thing again, whole backfill and so on. And so this was not so much fun. And of course, like this was why like this approach was tempting to say, hey, I dump just everything, how I get it, let's say in really like the raw source state, how I get the data. And then I transform it to the shape that I want to work with it, because it keeps me flexible to change this in the future, because I want to have, let's say, a different transformation. And I would still say this is like a valid thing, but today you could also like design ETL in a, let's say, in a slightly different way, that you have a place where you first dump the raw format and then you still do the transformation on the way and then until you load it on your database. Because one thing is definitely, even when storage is cheap, let's say the CPU to transform the stuff in the, let's say, in a analytical database like Snowflake and BigQuery. So if you just, because like it's elastic, so if you just, let's say, compare the cost per hour or so, or cost per query that is running, still this CPU is quite expensive compared to, let's say, a normal CPU that runs on a, let's say, a random agnostic kind of server. There might be still use cases, and I guess this is also something that we see now. There are use cases where it definitely makes sense to move the transformation out again of the analytical database, do it before, and then get it into this. And the interesting thing is even the tools who were like really forging these term ELT, so most likely I think it was Fivetran, even they have now a transformational layer within, so they basically became back ETL things. If you see this around, just ignore it. So in the end, it's just about extracting, loading, and transforming, or extracting, transforming, loading. In which kind of order, who cares? And sometimes you just extract and load. Can also be like, this is what I mean with EL. Don't really take so much care about it. It's more like really, there has to be a way to getting data from X to Y. And still, this is like a thing, at least like in the project that I'm doing, is that takes, I would say, most of the time, at least in new setups, where we really spend most of the time to get the data into a database. And let's say it's very generalized, but let's say there are two different scenarios that we can look in when you load data. So there is, let's say, standard data or standardized data to some degree. I don't know if it's like really the best. And there is, let's say, custom data. We could also call it short tail, or I don't know, bestsellers, and long tail. Maybe this makes more sense. What's behind that? There are specific kind of data sources that are regularly used in a lot of data setups. There are the classic ones. Let's pick this one, for example, Salesforce. There are enough companies doing stuff on Salesforce. Then, of course, we have Google Ads. So like all the marketing use cases, and then of course like Facebook ads and so on. So there are specific kind of sources, and then of course like all the, let's say the application databases. So not to forget, because it's also like a good example, let's say a Postgres database, and it can be MySQL, MariaDB, whatever. So classic where application data is. There are these, let's say standard and really like bestseller use cases that happen pretty often. So let's say when I do 10 data projects, I would say in 8, I definitely come across one of these. And there are companies who said, okay, we are specialized on these. So we basically take, let's say the 80, 100 most common data sources, and we build integration for it. And so we do everything boxed up for you. You just have to take it, plug it in, and it's working. And this is definitely a promise that holds up. So most of them are really like this. So you can go in, you can select something, and if you don't really want to configure it heavily, which we will come to this point that it can make sense to configure it at least with a little bit more effort. But let's say if you don't really care, you want to dump basically everything into your database, then these kind of tools are really great, because like I can, for example, say I want to do some reporting on Google Ads data, and I can have the data within, let's say, an hour in my database. It's not really a very complicated setup, and you will see this in a second when we look into these different kind of solutions. The problem is, in most cases, there are still, let's say, 1 or 2, and sometimes 10 or 20 of, let's say, other systems that this company is using that are not covered by these standardized data providers. And then all of them, of course, have a way how you can do some custom stuff. So Fivetran has something where you can run, I think, AWS Lambda functions and or Google Cloud functions, and then get the data back into Fivetran. So working with this never was really like a satisfying experience. It was something that always felt half-baked, because yeah, you needed more control to really do this custom integration, but you still are bound to how Fivetran is handling things. And I usually then ended up to do a custom pipeline. And this is like what still happens like in most of the projects that I'm doing, that at some point we build just like a custom data pipeline. And they are around, and I would still say they make the majority of, let's say, data moved around are still like custom data pipelines. So we will not look into custom data pipelines today. And they are also like, it's a nice mention, so we will not cover them today because they don't offer services right now in Europe. And since I'm from Europe, so of course, like I have my heart a little bit here, and so I might cover them when they're opening up. So for example, there's Portable, which is really like trying to do this custom data integration, and they help you. So for example, if you have, let's say, a specific ERP system and you don't really have a standard integration for that, they can build it for you, and then you basically pay them. So at least for some kind of time that you are committed to them to get the data from there, and so they can build it for you, so that you don't have to build the custom data pipeline on your own. Because one thing that I definitely learned is like building a custom data pipeline is usually quite quick, so it can be done, let's say, in some days, depending a little bit on API and on data volume and so on. But if you already did it sometimes, you usually have, let's say, a blueprint how you build it. But what I definitely see is the maintenance is the hard part. So you really have to make sure that you monitor it properly. You have to change it. So once like APIs change on the other end, then you basically are bound to change it. And so it's an investment over time. So today we will really look into the standardized data approach. So let's say to really cover the major use cases and assets. So what we want to do is, so we want to get a very simple example. So we want to get data from a GitHub repository. But we could also use, let's say, Google Analytics, Google Ads, whatever. But GitHub is quite nice because also we don't have to authenticate now because we are using an openly available repository. Yes, and so we do GitHub and we put it into BigQuery. Why BigQuery? Just because I use it usually like for these demonstration purposes. I could also do it with Snowflake and so on, but I just right now don't have a Snowflake demo account. I'm not saying lying around, but not really like available. Yeah, so we will have one where we might end up to do a little bit in Snowflake, so I will explain when we come to that. But yeah, in the end, the destinations are not really differently. So you have different kind of destinations that you can load the data, and they all work the same way. So you basically give access and then it goes down. Okay, what kind of tools will we check out today? So of course, like we will take naturally, I'm not really sure who is the market leader. Maybe Fivetran is the market leader. I never really look into this because I don't really care about it. Usually I care about specific things. So I care about ease of use. So time to value is definitely something which is really important for me. So if I have to configure out the hell, it might be nice, but it might be only nice in specific kind of use cases. So this comes to the next one. So I want to choose between quick integration and also like still have the possibility to drill things later to, let's say, the things that I need. And it makes sense in loading. So you don't really should load just everything out of the box. So you should be selective and you should even use transform to some degree. But today we do like the okay, give me all what we need from GitHub and just dump it into BigQuery approach. Let's say the POC. This is also like what I always try to explain when I work with clients is start out with a POC, take one or two significant data sources that you have, test out the tools, pull all the data just in it and look how does the shape look like, okay, does it really match with the use cases that I want to do and so how the whole tool works for you. And when you then do a production setup, then of course like you go more in, you filter really out, you say, okay, I don't really need. So really, even when these tools are tempting to bring you to this, to really load everything, in the end, they are all volume based. So the more you load, the more you pay. Lean, just take the stuff that you really need. Okay, so we look into Fivetran. Then we will look into something which some people might not really know, but I really like in this kind of approach because their approach is a little bit different. We will look also into Kibula. Then, of course, we will look into Airbyte because it got a lot of attention. And I think it's definitely a good alternative to look into. Then we look also into Hevo, which I discovered I think last year and did at least a sample project on my own with it and really liked it, especially like from the user experience perspective. And then we will also look into the good old, it's maybe not so nice to say, call them good old Stitch, because I started out with Stitch. I don't know if Stitch was the first one. I should make some history research about it, but it was definitely present there, and I think it was before Fivetran. Maybe they were the ones who started everything out. And the interesting thing is Stitch, out of Stitch, there was like this development of the Singer open source project, so the real open source project, where they basically developed community-based connectors that were then used in Stitch as well. And then that a lot of stuff from Airbyte, at least when they were starting out, was built on. And so this running gag that when you look at a connector, it's usually just like a Singer connector. I think Airbyte now has changed a little bit, so they also moved on. But yeah, we will come to this when we talk about this. So this is what we want to do. So we basically take the same approach. We take a GitHub repository and we run the setup. Let's say the first setup through all these tools to create an account, add a destination, and connect to GitHub and get the data down. What I won't do is like, I will not give extensive explanations of what all these steps now mean in these tools. So this might be additional courses in the future where I just do a single, let's say Fivetran, how to get started with Fivetran, how to get started with Kibula, how to get started with Airbyte, Havo and Stitch. If you're interested, definitely let me know. So then I might invest some time into this. So today it's more like really like, it's an overview to that you get an idea, okay, how these different tools work. Okay. Enough talking, let's do things. Yes, so we will not do landing page breakdowns. It's now called the Automated Data Movement Platform. And as you can already see, they have no load here, Transform X. So even when they were trendsetter for this ELT movement, I think, thanks God, no one is really talking about this anymore. Okay, we start for free. And yeah, okay, that's good because I already did another session yesterday where I had created a new account, so I was just hoping that I was not logged in anymore, but I'm not. So let's do a quick account. What's my deepest data, just because not that they get confused. So we do this, we call this DSD test 1 as our email, so I can still do a free trial. So we are based in Denmark. So this is not my real phone number if you want to try to reach me. Okay, let's sign up. Okay, we have to do email validation, so just give me a second that I can get them. All right, so we create our password. For purpose of demos, I usually use a very straightforward one. because I delete these accounts also. Very important if you test tools, delete them afterwards, especially if you have a credit card on file, and so it might. Okay, so then we have welcome to Fivetran. I think usually there was a graphic left to it. We will do now the onboarding stuff so that you can see how it looks like. Okay, what I want to do, so I want to centralize data from applications. All right. Okay, so this is quite nice, and in the end we are now really getting into it. And so this is what I mean with time to value. I did this one session where I really had a specific use case with Fivetran. I set up a new account and I was a little bit annoyed that I couldn't immediately start with what I really wanted to do. But this was an edge case. Usually I really like, especially when you try out a new tool, that they definitely from the first step on, they get you into the action to really set things up. We want to do GitHub. Here we are. Continue setup. So I guess, okay, so this is like interesting. So for example, I would just pull stuff from a public repository, and so I would assume, okay, I don't really have to log in. This is now something so that I might have to log in. So let's see how this works, but in the end, I don't care. I can also log in. Let's give it a good name. So we know DSD test. We also like FT in the front. So this is something where we will see this, how the others are solving it. I am always thinking about, okay, I'm always not sure how they basically will dump it into BigQuery, because yeah, in the end, of course, like I want to organize stuff really nicely in BigQuery, and they are not always, maybe they communicate it to some degree, but I don't really usually understand how data will land up. So I usually have to do a test run, then see, maybe not so how I want to, and then I do a second setup and yeah, rerun everything again. Okay, so we do test, GitHub. Okay, yes, we will use OAuth, I think. So then we have to authorize. So you will see this a lot. So we'll have to do a lot of authorization. Okay, yes, we want to give this to. Okay, we need my authentication code. As you can see here, I follow, of course, best practices to protect my GitHub account. By the way, this is one thing which I really love about GitHub, that I can put in my authentication code, and they immediately basically authorize it and so on, so I don't have to press a button anymore. Okay, no, I don't want to think all repositories. Okay, so it looks like it's a little bit more complicated here. Let's take the one with my event collector. In the end, since this is just like pulling data, not really working with the data, it's not so relevant what we are selecting here. What you just saw, it immediately tested if everything is working, if it can basically get the data from GitHub, and so this is working, this is good. And so now we basically, the next step is we have to make sure that we put it somewhere, and so we use GitHub here. No, we don't use GitHub, we use BigQuery here. And so, okay, let's do a quick BigQuery setup. So I have this kind of project, so project you usually get from here. Then, as I said, so I will do, so in the other course that I did with Fivetran, I spent more time here. So if you're interested to see more, to know, okay, what does it mean, let's say with owner service accounts on, just watch this. So we basically here, it's like we have to grant the Fivetran service account access or specific permissions in our setups. Often it's the other way around, so you have to create a service account and then give the service account credentials to them. And so here we do it differently. So we add the Fivetran one. We need the BigQuery user. I just know this because I just did it 2 times in the last 2 weeks. So this is what we do. So we give Fivetran service account access as BigQuery user to our BigQuery instance. Okay, that's done. Let's go back. Data location. I usually work in Europe North 1. Data processing is different. So the first one is where we store the data. Here's where we process the data. So it's important for me that it is EU. GCP is right. And I'm in Central Europe time. We have it. And save and test. So again, the same thing. So they're just testing out, okay, does this whole permission giving works out? So if not, then the first one would already fail. So this works, not true. So I'm not sure what they test in this connection and user permissions. And it might, I don't know. So fine, that looks good. Continue. And that's already the setup for the first connector. And this is what I mean, which is really nice with the onboarding experience, because this was still part of the onboarding, but I now basically have my first setup ready. And so the finest thing that I really have to do is I have to start the synchronization. So let's do this. And so that's it. So now the connector is syncing some data, and so we will not wait and watch in real time how they sync. So we move on to the next one. Okay, Keboola. Keboola is a little bit different to the other ones because they are more, let's say, they call themselves end-to-end ETL, but I would still say they are a little bit more. So they are more, let's say, like a platform to do specific kind of data engineering and analytics engineering tasks, especially like when you don't really have a huge team of, let's say, 10 or 20 people. So they have more stuff about it. So they integrate all the different kind of steps. So for example, you don't really need an additional orchestrator. So this is often something that, for example, if you Fivetran, DBT and other stuff, so then you usually put also like an orchestrator, Airflow, Prefect or Dexter on top. So Kibula has everything baked in, and so you can gradually upgrade everything to use all the different kind of things in Keboola to do this. But today we do the same stuff that we do with Fivetran, and it might look a little bit differently. Okay, we do the same stuff here. We do BSD test 1 at Deep Sky Data. As you can already see here as well, so everyone at least have a free trial or has even like a free account. Kibula, for example, has a free account. Fivetran also have a free account. These can enable you to run really like a very easy task all the time on these kind of platforms. They can be really great to test out things, but everyone knows, like you say, hey, I want to start a free trial, but then you don't have the resources on your end to really test something. Free trial is over and doesn't really work. I'm a huge fan if tools have a free plan, because it gives me the opportunity to basically test the way how I test things. And this is usually not within 14 days, especially not if you load data, because you have to do things afterwards. Okay, yes, we create this kind of project. Again, we check our email for a confirmation, or not validation. Here we are. Okay, so here we are. So test password and activate. Okay, yes, but I don't really care. Okay, here's again, so like onboarding. Okay, create my first flow. Okay, let's create a new flow. So they have a little bit different onboarding experience. So they basically already get me in the tool. They don't really have, let's say, an onboarding flow. I usually tend to find onboarding flows a little bit easier than this. Okay, you go into the tool and then we highlight stuff to do, but let's see how this works out. What's definitely different, I would say, from Keboola to the other ones. So the other ones seems to be, let's say, very easily. And for example, in the Fivetran case, we didn't really look into transformations, so we just did the one thing. It doesn't really, so you definitely have more things that you can do in these platforms to extend what you do. But for example, Keboola is really built around that you create, let's say, data flows, how they call it. And this, of course, requires potentially a little bit more configuration, but of course, like, it's more powerful to do different kind of things. So let's call it our sample GitHub flow. Okay, we create the flow. Okay, nice. Okay, it looks like this. I usually never really look at this, but okay, so we need a first step. I guess the first step here is, as I said, Keboola gives you more opportunity to configure more stuff, but you definitely should have more like an idea what you want to do. So for me now it's straightforward because I know what I want to do, but if someone is not really aware of, let's say, the topic of ETL or loading data, so it might not be obvious what to do next. And so what we want to do, so we wanted to have GitHub. So let's look for GitHub. Okay, it looks like it's a data source, so we can do something. And so we have to create a new configuration. Okay, this is something we know already. Now comes the interesting part. Kibula basically, oh no, it's not. Okay. Okay, so now we have to basically connect GitHub, or let's say GitHub, create a configuration. Okay, and now we're on the configuration part. Okay, I have to authorize my account. Yes, that's all right. Okay, this is basically the same, which we know. So we give to Deep Sky Data. Okay, same stuff happening pretty quick. And then, okay, then we have, this is also definitely different. So we have, let's say, 2 modes. So we can, this is quite nice, but okay, we have a smart mode where we can just get the missing data, which I guess is just like the nicer name for incremental load, which definitely is nice. Then full mode, I guess it's just full load mode. Then I don't really know what extended means. Extract only new data. Because like for me this would be the same. So it's a little bit confusing. So let's say I stay with the smart mode here. And as you could just see, so I also get, no I don't get. I could basically write my own configuration here with JSON configuration. So we won't go in this. So this is like a concept that Keboola has, that you can basically build custom integrations here as well with some JSON configuration, which works pretty well. And so I might do a course about this. But today we just use the template. And so again, smart mode template. Let's save that. And then, no, we don't need any kind of processes. So now it's the big question, okay, what comes next? I think this was more obvious, like in the Fivetran case. I could run this component, but what is this doing? So let's do it. So we run the component. Yes, I know what this means. So in the end, this is like what they are telling me is like, so Kibula, for example, charges you for runtime of any kind of stuff that you do. So if you run, let's say, a load job, which we will do now, no, we run an extract job, then it basically counts up the seconds that it needs. And then you basically, I think you have 300 minutes for free every month. And so once you consume, then you basically have to pay up. This is one plan. They have also like another plan where you already get more out of the box. So, okay, we run the component. This, as you can see, so like it's a definitely different more approach. So you see more things here. So you don't really just see 3 tick boxes. So we will now basically see how Kibula is loading my GitHub data. The only thing is I haven't configured yet which kind of GitHub repository I want. And so let's quickly go back if I could. No, so it looks like if I go with the smart mode, I basically pull everything. Okay, it's fine so far for me. Might make the job a little bit longer. But here you can see, so you can do different steps. So it already fetched the data. Now it stores the data internally. And so this is also, in the end, we will not do a full Keboola session here, but you have different kind of ways. So you have an internal storage where first the data lands before you decide where you basically want to bring it into destination. And you could do a lot of stuff in between. So we could now create some transformations with either dbt, we could create transformations with SQL, we can create transformations with Python, we can then first load other stuff and then already mix it together. So we can do crazy stuff before things actually end up in our final analytical database. So I guess it's still, yes, it's still loading. Okay, so why we are still waiting? Because it now pulls basically all my GitHub data out, so this can definitely take a little bit. So let's go back to the flow and already add our destinations, because this is something we don't really have to wait for. So again, we want to get it into BigQuery, and so here it's important. BigQuery also, it's also like a data source, so I could pull data from BigQuery, so I have to make sure that I use it as a data destination. Also, like we connect a new things, BSD test EQ. Okay, same kind of dialogue. Here again, it's different. For example, here I have to create a service account on my end and just push in my account keys. Let's quickly do this. Service account. And honestly, because I'm testing so many things, it's really, I can do this already, I guess, blindly. Okay, we create a new service account. What I usually do is I put test in front of it if I test something, and then usually the name and... okay, so yes, it's always like, I never know on GCP where I can use underscores or hyphens. Anyway, okay. So this is something we have to figure out, what kind of role do we need. So this would be now nice. Okay, let's have a look here. Up there is the documentation. Okay, I create a service account. Okay, so we need data editor and BigQuery job user. This is quite common if you work with BigQuery. I could have guessed it. Data editor, and do we have the job user? Nope. Okay, because I pretty often use them. Job user. Okay. Continue. Done. As you can see, it definitely takes a little bit longer than to just add an external user. We have it here, and so the only thing I could have done, I can do it here. What we have to create keys. We have to create a JSON key because this is what Keboola is expecting to get. We create a new key, we use JSON, so it has been saved. So I will now get it, and we can just paste it here, submit, save. And now you can already see, so this is all the information that is in the JSON present, and Kibula just pulls it out and saves this for me. So this, for example, is a little bit nicer because I now really know, okay, where I add all the different kind of things. And I want to have it in a test, Kibula, save, so I can define which kind of data set I want. And yeah, so let's close this for now, because now we have to wait until the other data is already there. We have everything saved, so this looks good. So let's go back here. Okay, and this is already done. The thing is here. What I really like, this we have, let's say we have output tables. It's temporary or not temporary. It's in Kibula storage for now, and we can do stuff with it. As I said, we could now even go in and do some transformation on top, enrich it with other kind of data. Here we can see how the data looks like. All right, very nice. And as you can see, so we have different kind of tables. So we have all the repositories, we have members, commits, we have issues, we have teams. I might just pull the commits into BigQuery. Okay, let's go back to the flow. This one, and now we can basically configure this, because now we can create a table. So we take the commits, exactly, great, commits. And here again, so like I have definitely out of the box already more configuration, so I can in Fivetran also already configure a lot more if I go deeper into this, but here I already can. So do I do full load? So I usually go with automatic incremental load. This is, let's say, the nicest way, that I don't really use too much resources. So it in my case, because the table doesn't really exist, so it will do a full load as the first one, and then afterwards it will just check for the changes between the last load that has been happening. Here I could even go down and can say, okay, what kind of fields I want to get into it, or if I just want to. Okay, now I have to define the data type. Okay, that's interesting. Because usually it's, so right now it's everything ignoring. Of course I don't want to have it, because I don't really want to invest now time. Please bear with me. I just pull in everything as string. If I do it properly, I would now go into the storage, would analyze how the data looks like, and then make a decision, okay, what kind of, let's say, data type really makes sense. But I would say from everything that I see here, string might be a really good guess. All right, and now let's, oops, no, I don't want to. Okay, I have to save first. Okay, and then yes, I know. Okay, as you can see here, so we started both jobs separately. When we come back to the flow, what I would do now, if I would really add the synchronization, I would basically add a schedule here and would say, okay, I do it maybe daily and so on, and then basically it runs the flow. So it starts with step 1, then it comes step 2, and I could, as said, I can do multiple steps. And so this is quite nice. In the end, this gives me a lot of flexibility to really like synchronize different kind of flows that I want to have. So I could maybe say, okay, I want to have, let's say, a parallel step next to it, or I want to make sure that first I load some stuff here in step 1. This is really quite nice, and I already built very complex flow configurations with that, and it works really well. And so just a quick look. Okay, so this is already, so this got quite quick. So now it's basically already in BigQuery. Nice. Let's move on. Next one. And here we come to Airbyte. And Airbyte definitely was really good in making a, let's say, quite big wave when they were coming around, because they came out and say, okay, we are an open source solution to basically ELT, ETL, whatever, so to data pipelines. And then basically we first do the open source integration as said. So they picked up a lot from the open source Singer project in the first place, and I know that they are now investing a lot of time and resources to develop other connectors from from their end. There are still people, and I think they definitely have a point, who point out that, is Airbyte really open source? Airbyte is using the Elastic license, and I'm definitely not an expert on open source licenses, but as far as I know, it's definitely limited, which to some degree is understandable. Open source always has the problem that when then one of the big cloud vendors sees, okay, there's a lot of traction and this is really great, and so we will just pick this, put this on AWS and make a GCP service, and Airbyte to some degree has to pay their people as well. I guess this is like a move to protect themselves about this, but it also makes it hard, let's say, for claiming that it's true open source, because I guess it's not, because you cannot just pick. So you can run it for free, like from their GitHub repository, but it's not like that you can pick it, the integrator, and build your own open source package with this. I think this is not possible, but don't name it to this. So there are other people already invested more time, but I definitely get their point that maybe claiming that it's really like open source. So it's, I think there's even like a better term, some people have it, so like say that the source code is available and so whatever, I don't know. So there may be better terms, but of course like open source sells pretty well, so don't underestimate the marketing effect of selling stuff by just naming it open source. So again, but today we use the cloud version, so we don't set up. So I could already also set up everything on GCP, but this might be a different course that I do. So today we just use the cloud version. Okay, so here we go. Let's start with the sign up. Let's go data test. So this is test 1, and a very strong password. Sign up. Okay, and so here again, so we have definitely an onboarding experience. I don't really know what I should do now. Should I do here? Should I do here? I guess we do it here, but okay. So I have a checklist, what I have to do. This is a little bit weird that I have onboarding here and onboarding here. Anyway. Okay, so we want to do GitHub. Exactly. Okay, the same. Here again, so okay, let's call it DSD GitHub. So I don't really know what this name does, so it's just for internal, or does it already create some tables with this? Yes, so we already know this. Grant to here, authorize. Okay, start date. This is definitely something that the others haven't asked. So I know that, for example, in Fivetran, and I guess in Kibula as well, so you can define how long you want to go back. So let's say, okay, how should I do? Okay. Again, so it would be really nice to immediately know how I should format it, but okay, at least I see it. It's a little bit annoying that I really have to match the full format. I would just put in the name, just the date. Okay. Again, also this is, let's say, a little bit of UX thing. So I have to know which kind of repository I want. Just let me quickly look it up. Okay, I looked it up, and okay, I have to have it in this kind of format. Okay, I could also use wildcards. Okay, this is nice. So I could use wildcard to basically pull all my repositories in there, but I don't want to, so that's fine. Oh, I could even define the branch. Interesting. Page size. I think it depends, so how they load it. I don't know. Okay. Test the source. Oh look, this is nice. I get a bonus if I complete my first connection into 24 hours, and I get credits. So this is interesting. Airbyte works a little bit different from the pricing model, and so not so much in the end it's the same pricing model, but they do it a little bit differently. So you basically buy credits and you use up credits with every load, and so the credits then of course depends on the volume that you want to load, which is then in the end of course like similar what the others are doing as well. So I said Kibula does it with runtime, so the minutes you can use. I think Fivetran is still like with the rows, like unique rows that you load, and then backfill is usually I think for free. So yeah, in the end it all comes down how much I use and how much data I pull. Okay, so we have GitHub configured, and then Oh, that's nice. So I could use for different kind of things, but of course, like these are, I guess, the two obvious ones that you use. And so this is like teach my data BigQuery. Yep. Let's see what we have to create in a second. So first we need the project, then dataset location. Okay, this is good. So this was already interesting. So I have to check it with Kibula, because Kibula was not asking me for where I want to save the data. So let's see where they saved it. Default dataset ID. Okay, so I can basically define how the dataset should look like. Okay, I also can test Airbyte. Interesting. They have different kind of loadings, and so of course, like I would have to read it. Yeah, okay. So I think the difference what they make is like, so you can either just use the insert statement to get everything in there, or you can use staging, so which would put everything into Google Cloud Storage first, and then insert in the table. So they recommend it for most workloads. Okay, so I guess but then I have to, okay. Okay, we don't do it. It's good. And I guess if you really would run this as a production thing, then I definitely might do it. But as you can see here, like it requires a lot more setup, and especially for testing cases. So let's go with the standard one. Okay, so we need. It's interesting why it's optional for open source. Okay, whatever that means. I guess maybe their own open source solution, whatever. Okay, of course they need the JSON as well, so this is like the same stuff that we already did. Let's do it again. We need a service account. We create a new one. Airbyte. And test Airbyte. Okay. Yes. This is, as I said, so I always run into this issue. Okay, let's see what kind of permissions do we need. Okay, it would be nice to know this. So this, I like it, so as the Fivetran does the same thing, so that they have the documentation on the right, so at least I don't have to create a new, I don't often have to open a new one. But they, okay, this is also, okay, they recommend the staging, so we do, for test purpose, we do the standard insert because it doesn't take so long. But here, it would be great if I just tell me what kind of roles I have to do. Okay, they don't, they even don't tell me here. That's weird. Check out the docs. Is it still like the Google Docs? No. Okay, that's weird. That's something they could do better. So I'm missing the part where I have to say what kind of permissions they need, because this is usually like a lot of back and forth if you don't really know what to do. Okay, this can definitely be improved. Okay, so I assume we need the same stuff that we did before. So it was, I think, data editor and job. Could BigQuery user, which definitely has more permissions. Let's try the one that we already did for Kibula, which are also like the standard ones that usually are used for others. Okay. So we need the key again. So if you do this pretty often, then it goes pretty quick. Okay, we have the key. I will copy the JSON stuff. I just have to find, no, this is the wrong one. It's the right one. Especially if you create so many keys, it's really like easy to mix them up in your download folder. Okay, so we pass in the key. Okay. Now I hope we will know if our roles are sufficient. So don't get me wrong. So there are two use cases. So either you want to try something really quick, and then for me Fivetran, bam, you just go through it, and then of course you want to configure stuff. So I really let you, for example, have the option to decide how you want to insert the data. So I think this is definitely, on the long run, it's a benefit. But of course, like here now, it took some time. But as we can see, it seems to have worked out. And this is also like nice. Now I can also like say, okay, what I want to synchronize, and so I would definitely want to have maybe the commits as well. And I can even go in, so for example, can see, okay, cursor field, I guess might be some kind of, yeah, it's for incremental sync. So this is nice that I can select and already define it here. And I guess if I would go into it, then I could even yeah. I'm not sure if I can configure it here already. Maybe. Also, this is nice to make a selection here, so to use between raw data, JSON, or normalized tabular data. This is like how most of them do this, so they basically flatten everything out. But since JSON becomes more and more, let's say, established and popular, it might be also like an option to not have this broad tables, and then basically you can pick easier on that. It definitely is worth a test to some degree to figure out, okay, what works best. So I stick now with the standards and set up the connection. Finally. All right, and the sync is running. That's Airbyte. Okay, moving on. Hevo. I discovered them, I don't know really where I came across them. I tested them last year and it was really good experience. Let's test them here again. Let's go into .com. Okay, yeah, so we're deep span data test. And I start my free trial. Here again, they have a free trial. I think they don't have a free account as far as I know. Also, for example, Airbyte don't really have an explicit free account, so their open source setup is basically their free account. Okay, I don't really have, I'm my only employee. I'm someone who cannot be defined. Okay, I don't really like when I have to provide phone numbers during signups, so. And okay, that's nice. I can select my region, so I will go with Europe. Let's see if it picks the number, because it's a legit Danish phone format. Okay, sometimes. Okay, here we start with the destination. Okay, why not? I start with BigQuery. Maybe let's go a step back. This is also interesting. This is Kibula has the same thing. Keboola, you get a Snowflake instance out of the box, so you don't really have to dump the things into BigQuery. And so Hevo basically has the same thing. So I can say, okay, I don't really have an analytical database yet, so why not take one that Hevo has? And Hevo really takes no care. So this is like they have a Google BigQuery instance, so Kibula has Snowflake. And this can be interesting if you really have, for example, you run very simple, let's say, marketing analytics and you just want to aggregate different kind of data into one place. And then this could be nice, that you can really say, okay, yeah, please take care of it. I don't really care where I have my stuff. So this, I really like it. I don't really have so many use cases for this, but it's not true. So I did some projects on, for example, Keboola, where I was using the internal Snowflake instance because like it was for the project really sufficient. Okay, again, verification. Interesting. So Airbyte, I think, didn't have it. So, oh no, they had it as well, but I think it was not required in the initial setup. So here we have our verification link. Ha. Okay, this is okay, interesting. Okay, we will still continue here. So what they did is I already have an Hevo account, which I was using for, I think, and they have a free plan because I'm running here on a free plan. I did it like as a playground, and so they now basically found me by my top level domain and just say, hey, actually, don't create a new account, here's yours. Which is a little bit unfortunate for the demo. So I can now request access to myself, which I will do now. So I will give myself access to my other account. Okay, now it basically doesn't care which kind of account I go into it. So do I like it? Not really, because especially like for test client use cases, I want to set up new accounts. Also like on my same, of course I could now burner email, but yeah. You can see, for example, I'm loading YouTube data here. That was my playground use case. Let's build a new pipeline for the test case that we had. We have source and it's GitHub. And as you can see here, it's paid, so this might not even work now. Let's see. Okay, because Hevo did this, that we basically onboarded me on my existing account, so I now give the favor back by just using my existing BigQuery destination. Okay, this is nice, so I can decide which kind of, so Hevo, so test, GitHub. Nope. Okay, I want to keep auto mapping. I also, if I would disable it, I could now do the same stuff that we already did with Keboola, that I can really decide how to do the fields. Okay, I think this is like usually, okay, the same what we had in Airbyte. Do I want to use real JSON, so nested fields, or do I want to flatten it out? Cannot be changed after the pipeline is created. Okay, it's fine for me. Alright, that's it. Okay, it's working. I haven't really configured, so I guess it does the same stuff what we already had in Kibula, so it basically pulls out everything from GitHub. Yeah. I really would like to revisit it. Okay. Okay, keep it loading. Stitch. Stitch, I have, let's say, a love and hate relationship with. I'm not sure if Stitch was really like the first one around, but definitely very early. And I think they were before Fivetran. And so I think I did the first data integration with Stitch. And Stitch had one big benefit over a long time. So Fivetran had, let's say, I think they had a more expensive static model in the first place, and they introduced their very complicated variable model, but you were still usually like landing up with more costs. And so Stitch was really nice because you were paying, I think the entry level was around $100 US per month, and then you already could cover it, at least like when you were working with startups, and I was working with startups a lot at that time. Stitch was really good because they really had a good pricing model for that. And so I guess they might have still the same, yeah. Nice, but it changed a little bit because now Fivetran has a free plan. Of course, like you can also then just set up Airbyte if you want. So Kibula also has a free plan. So Stitch, I think, is still a good option. If you want to test out ETL tools, you make a list of all the data sources that you have. You compare them across all the different kind of tools, who's covering it, and I definitely recommend to go with the one who's covering everything, if possible. You don't want to have 3 ones handling your data pipelines. This can be a scenario in the future, but definitely not something you want to start out. And then, of course, then you can calculate the prices, what you would expect, which is sometimes hard, especially like with the variable ones. So this is nice why they have free accounts, so you can already see how much do you really need and how do you use up. And then after testing everything, you can make really like a calculation to see what kind of cost you will end up. All right, so let's sign up. Yep. Okay, why do I have to put in my first name and last name? I don't know. Okay, this is my company. We are in Denmark. Yes, again, nice that I want to decide it here. So for example, like by Hevo, we couldn't see it, but I did it in the initial setup. I could also like decide. Oh no, we did it, I think. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, so you can decide there as well. Page online. Also like something which I really hate. Sorry, please. Let's say I'm educated enough to know what kind of password I choose for stuff. So thanks for educating me here. Sorry, this is just a personal thing. Because of course, if this would be like my production one, I would use a very secure password. Right now I'm just using a test password. Okay, so account is ready. We do an integration. So here we start also with the integration. So let's look for GitHub. Here we have it. Integration name, GitHub most likely. What's the base URL? Okay, it's not really telling here. So I assume it's basically this one. Let's test it. And my repository name is, let's say, DSK event. schema hub. So yes, I want to sync historical data, so I take 1 year. So here I could change it now to where I want to go back. Replication frequency, it's nice that they ask me here, because so you can configure this in all other tools as well, but here I can already put it to 24 hours because definitely need it. Okay, then we do the authorization. So this is quite interesting. Everyone else was authorizing me first, and then they did all the other things because you could already see it. So it's, of course, it's a lot nicer when I can just load the repositories and don't have to select it there. So here it's a bit different. This is a nice thing. Oh yeah. Okay, this is the first one there where it's not what really was working. Please provide valid organization repository for. Okay. I guess my link was wrong. And so this is like why I think this is so easy to solve. So they could just put in description tags under it what they're expecting here. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Even when it really goes to my nerd terms, maybe it has some problems with my okay, so I think I get an idea. But this is really not a nice integration, to be honest. And this I said like love and hate. So I love that it was so accessible, but I hate it. I hate the configuration setup in Stitch. Because I always run into this. Here's my valid organization. This is okay, so let's assume it doesn't make sense. Okay, I could be clever. Okay, yeah, read the documentation, of course. Yes. Base field. Enter the GitHub URL to use. Okay, no. Okay. Okay, so then this was totally wrong. Got it. Okay, but this is, how should you come up with this on your own? No. Okay, let's see. And it hasn't changed, so I always had this problem with Stitch. That stuff was not working. Of course, like they have definitely good enough documentation that you can figure out, but I'm someone who doesn't really like. Okay, like I can choose what kind of data I want to things, and I can really go down now. This also, like, I was struggling, like, okay, yes, I want all fields. So I could even go down and can say, okay, I'm not really interested in some fields. So let's just use the commit data. Yes, please. Okay, now comes the destination. BigQuery. That's the test queue. So this is also like crazy. They need admin for storage in BigQuery. Yeah. Okay. It's definitely, so it's really like a rare case that for today you really have to give them so much, and I think you could drill it down. So definitely also not something I like. Stitch, test, stitch. Yeah. So I would definitely immediately. Here is nothing can happen as a test project, but still storage admin. Okay, this definitely, I would not say it's a no-go for me, but it's definitely raising some question marks. Okay, we need the keys. Okie dokie. Good. Finland, please. Okay, loading behavior. So I can decide, okay, basically absurd means like we do a full load. So this is like the full load mode. And then we can do an append mode. So we do append here. And here, for example, I'm not 100% sure how it handles it. Okay, I could learn more. Let's assume this fits. Okay, now it's testing my connection again. Okay, this worked. Yay, so the data pipeline is ready. Okay, now it's running the synchronization, and so this will take some time. Okay, so that's it. It took us a little bit longer than an hour, but now we basically did the setup with everything, and so maybe we can have a final look. The major purpose for me was like, okay, if you really new to load the data, if you want to refresh everything, what you can do there. So this was like the session about. So I wanted to show, okay, what are the different kind of differences between ELT, ETL, whatever, and then just showcase, okay, how you can set up things. And so I think what you can already see is one of the major benefits of Fivetran always was like, it was super quick to really starting out. The thing that definitely then will be interesting for you, and this is like what I recommend if you test Fivetran, is like how you can configure it that it really fits your use case. You don't want to pull every kind of data, so you maybe really want to exclude some kind of data because you really doesn't want to do it. Maybe you really want to configure the loading in a little different way, and you have a lot of options there, but you really have to then learn these kind of options. So Fivetran was always really good to get you time to value. Definitely, you could see it in the session. Definitely, I would say the best with that. Always very good documentation and so on. But like definitely what I recommend if you're thinking about go with Fivetran, make sure what kind of really like end use cases you want to have. So do you want to do some transformation and so on, and then test this out as well. It's really cool that they now have a free plan, so that because this gives you the ability to run these. Because like most of the test is usually on the long run, so you run it for 2 or 3 months and really, let's say, in a really good project, and then you can see what works good and what not. Really, because like in the end, it's yes, you can use it just for loading, extracting use cases, but you can really build, let's say, full-fledged data pipelines with that, and even put the whole transformation on top. So this is something that you can also do with Fivetran, so you can run your full DBT project, but it's not so granular how you do it. I can basically run my full data, let's say data stack to some degree on Kibula with everything, with loading, with transformation, with I get logging, I get monitoring, I could set up alerts on that, and then I can even then load the data back into some kind of other system. So I can build the full kind of setup that I might need. So of course it's different when I create a modern data stack with 10 tools. Might give me more options in the end, but let's face it, especially in most cases you don't really need these kind of options. So there Keboola is really interesting because it gives you a lot of flexibility, but definitely it needs some more time to learn the kind of system. Airbyte, basically I would say in the middle. So definitely more configurable, I would say, than Fivetran, but of course, like it needs the investment to figure it out. Their pricing model is definitely very competitive, so definitely check it out and to learn how much credits you really need and then how much it will cost you in the end. And also it works pretty well. So I have still 2 connectors running on Airbyte and never really had huge issues with that. Hevo, yeah, I think it was Havo, yeah, so I think Havo also, like, it was now for the test case that it was a bit complicated, that I could not really create a new full test setup experience. If I prepared it differently, then yes, we could. But so what I like about Havo was also like it was basically similar, easy, like Fivetran was. I know they also have a free plan, but it was like, the free plan was basic. It was like, put it like, I mean, to judge Havo against the others is, I think I really haven't discovered yet the big strength of Havo yet, which set them apart. Yes, I think they're easier to configure than Airbyte. I would not say they are as easy as Fivetran to start out. So they are somewhere in the middle. They might have I think they have some connectors that the others don't have, but this is always like this differentiation game that you then go in, okay, do I have a connector that someone else doesn't have? But I don't know. So I really don't know yet what Havo would stand out for me. And then finally we have Stitch. And so Stitch was always like my candidate, especially like for early stage startups, because of their really good pricing model with their, let's say, $100 package. This benefit has gone away a little bit because like now Fivetran has the free plan, Kibula has a free plan. It's really like the question. So it might come down that you have a set of, let's say, sources that you need and the kind of data that you load, that Stitch still makes a case for you because it really has a very competitive pricing model. But as you can see, so they really haven't changed a lot when it comes down to how the onboarding works and how the configuration works. And I always run into the same issue. So what you just saw is something that usually happens on me if I set up something on Stitch. It's not like Fivetran where it usually works. On Stitch, it usually takes some reading up, then check out this, and so on. So this, especially to me, and maybe you are someone who's not concerned about this, but I don't really like this. And so this is, I would say, yeah, there might be use cases where I might use Stitch, but it's definitely not so many use cases anymore. So I hope this helps. So we will definitely do more sessions and courses about how to load data. And yeah, so see you in the next one.